Dynamo Kiev is reassuring. Kiev only some 80 miles away from the Chernobyl nuclear catastrophe, but understandably the Dynamo players and officials have kept silent on the problems in Kiev, concentrating very much on the matters in hand tonight. I'm sure the players glad to break away from the line-up there and get moving, get the legs going, try and run off some of the nerves. And whatever football form tells you, you know, of course, that finals are all about characters, strength of character as well as strength of limb. So will it be the team of Dem'yanenko or the team of Ruiz, the captain of Atletico Madrid? Maybe a slight linguistic problem for referee Franz Wöhrer at the kickoff, but he's made his point. "46 years old, the referee, a teacher from Vienna. The pitch very well grasped for the time of year. A French setting quite appropriate. Gabriel Hanot, a far-thinking French journalist, gave birth to the idea of football back in the 50s. But ironically, we're still waiting for a French club to win a European trophy. It's a fairly elderly stadium, this one. They freely admit that it needs some renovation. But behind the left-hand goal as we look, no inhibitions from the supporters of Atletico Madrid. Maybe we could bill this as a contrast in temperament, the passion of the Latins from Spain and the cool, sometimes clinical approach from the Soviet Union. Both goalkeepers, I'm sure, anxious for an early feel of the ball, and one is provided for Chanov by the back pass from Bezsonov. Dem'yanenko, arguably the best left-back in the world. I suppose Antonio Cabrini might dispute that. And Kenny Sansom. And it's Clemente wearing number 3 for Atletico Madrid who made the header. Here's Kike. And the referee right on the spot to give the free kick. The foul was by Arena. Atletico Madrid perhaps opting for a more solid midfield line of 4, leaving out Setien. So for V.Lobановський on the left as we look there, I'm sure a feeling a little bit of deja vu. He's been through it before. But Oleg Blokhin, the only player surviving from the previous Cup Winners' Cup triumph of Dynamo Kiev. Da Silva losing out to Zavarov, and then a mistake by Kuznetsov. Blokhin with the strapping, you can see, just above the left knee. Zavarov. Da Silva. Both sides have been plentiful in their goals in reaching this final, particularly Kiev, 23 goals in 8 games. And they've come spread throughout the team, which means to say that you can't just concentrate your attentions on blocking. Landaburu looking for but Dynamo Kiev finished 1985 as champions. They'll be in the Champions. Maybe of what is to come from a striker converted into a midfield player. The early ball for the run of Thomas played by Da Silva. Hit long by Yakovenko, and Clemente couldn't really deal with it, and here's Blockin. Got his 100th cap recently against Romania, and picked up the injury as well. But look at Zavarov, who kept the ball, but the referee didn't play the advantage. Dem'yanenko. Kuznetsov. Away by Ruiz. Not very far, though. And a tremendous turn of speed that creates an early opportunity here. And Filiol. Zavarov finished it off. Atletico stretched on their right-hand side. It looked for a moment as though the goalkeeper, Ubaldo Filiol, had done enough. But Zavarov was following in after Bielanov had had the first strike. 5 minutes gone, and the favourites in front. Filiol thrust out an arm, but Zavarov popped it into the corner. And that certainly has quietened the atmosphere in the stadium. Marina. Suddenly all the flags are down. But just the start that the Soviet Union team would have wanted. And here is the scorer. Kuznetsov. Bалтача. Bалтача played in the World Cup in '82. Bielanov making a nuisance of himself. The back pass from Landaburu. So we'll see really now what the Spaniards are made of. But here's their Uruguayan, Da Silva. Thomas, who's had an excellent season. With a long throw, Arteche has come forward. Da Silva is there and used an arm. and the referee did see it after Kike was allowed to go on and shoot wide, but it was clearly handball. Yakovenko, now Baltacha. Jelanov moving through the middle. Plenty of movement off the ball from Kiev. Block in. Ivan Yaремчук. And block in, who of course can strike from the left foot. Zavarov. And they're finding hard to live with him at the moment. You're seeing here, surely, one of the stars of the Mexico World Cup. If he can stay free of injury, he's such a small man. But his work on the ball and his eye for goal have already made an impact on the 1986 European Cup Winners' Cup final. Yakovenko, in fact, Zavarov had turned his back on the play and was perhaps just thinking back on his goal in the centre circle, which cut out the options for the man on the ball. Bezsonov with a throw. Baltacha. Dem'yanenko, it's out of play. Cabrera. Without wishing to be too pessimistic for Atletico Madrid, their two biggest ever defeats in European club competition have both come in finals. Beaten 5-1 in the Cup Winners' Cup final of '63 by Tottenham Hotspur, 4-0 by Bayern Munich in the Champions final of '74. They're a goal down here, but they have a corner, won for them by Kike. And they can be effective at set plays. Ruiz and Arteche, the two central defenders, have made their way forward. Taken by Landaburu. Cabrera. And Marina de Silva nearly made something of it, so too did Kike. Zavarov first to it again, and he was felled by Landaburu. Kuznetsov. So often the pattern for Dynamo Kiev is to come forward using both fullbacks. Dem'yanenko particularly on the left. There's a foul there by Da Silva on Kuznetsov, which was really a typical forwards tackle. Not a great deal of malice, but not a great deal of technique either. Yakovenko. And here's Bezsonov, showing he can get forward as well. And it's block in. And he was a little tentative there by his standards, which are the highest. And it could easily have been two. A tremendous break down the right by Bezsonov. Mistake by Landaburu, and that's Yakovenko. Well, Filiol very much in the firing line. Landaburu. Kike. Clemente kept it in play well, and then was challenged by Bezsonov. It's only a throw when Atletico Madrid were hoping for a free kick. Roberto Marina to take it. Alteche poised to try and meet it. And block in. And then Bezsonov clearing the lines through useful effect too. Bielanov. And Landaburu coming through strongly again. And Bielanov colliding with the camera rostrum there. He's back on his feet quickly, which is good to see. And the referee had his notebook out, and one can only assume he was recording the name of Landaburu. It wasn't his first foul. Dem'yanenko. And the chances are coming thick and fast. That one for Yakovenko. And there's a verve about the play of Dynamo Kiev, which is already lighting up this European final. The problem at the moment for Atletico Madrid is they just can't cope with the change of pace that so many of the Kiev players possess. Here's Ratz. Kike. Da Silva. Well, if it was a shot, it was of the tamest variety. He seems to be caught in two minds. Yaремчук running into trouble. Cabrera. A little bit of room for Atletico Madrid here. On from Clemente. Cabrera's cross. Da Silva trying to sneak in front of his marker and then bundling into the back of Bezsonov. Bielanov staying furthest forward for Dynamo Kiev. Blocking, just loitering around with intent. Slightly deeper. And then there's Zavarov also timing his runs from midfield. Kike. One back by blocking and then given away again. Landaburu. Da Silva. Landaburu, who has a reputation at striking at goal from long range, but they weren't able to set him up then. Yakovenko trying to thread the ball through for Bielanov. But here's Zavarov. Bielanov the target again. Block in. Cutting on to the left foot. And it was deflected. In fact, the shot was going way off target. But a good start for the team of V.Lobановський. Dem'yanenko to take the corner. Yakovenko. Dem'yanenko had got back to stay onside. And Zavarov there, and they've left block in. Filiol to the rescue. And they're furious on the Atletico bench. They're seeing their team at the moment being cut apart. A second goal then might have put it beyond Atletico's reach certainly their belief that they could get back. It stays at 1-0 thanks to Ubaldo Filiol. And the goalkeeper is there again. Rats to try again with the corner. And Landabro doing the defending. A vital save from Filiol, who just thrust out a leg when Blockin should have scored. Another testing one for the goalkeeper, and the referee was only a yard or two away to see whether he carried it over the line. But Vasily Rats curving the ball in wickedly. And a lesser goalkeeper than Filiol might have buckled then. Bezsonov. Well, there were understandable fears when the news came out from the Soviet Union about the radiation leak, with Dynamo Kiev coming from so close to the area of the disaster, but there can be no doubts about the fitness of the players we're seeing here. They're running the game at the moment. Bалтача. Da Silva. A lot depending on him. Could all change, of course, if Atletico could strike back on level terms. But they've already realised that they're facing one heck of a battle here. Chanov at one end has been merely a spectator, while Filiol has had a fusillade of shots coming in his direction and has been beaten once by Alexander Zavarov after 5 minutes. Bezsonov on Da Silva, free kick to Atletico. Landabro, handball. Yaремчук. Eased on by Blockin for Bielanov. Still Bielanov. And given away by Ruiz. Well, the team play of Dynamo Kiev is orderly, embroidered by players of the highest class. That's no exaggeration. Sometimes European finals haven't quite lived up in terms of quality to the occasion, but it's real quality we're seeing here. A block in from Zavarov's attempted pass, and there are long faces and anxious puffs on cigarettes down on the Atletico Madrid bench. Luis Aragonés, their coach, is a man who rarely smiles, even if his team's 5 goals up. So you can imagine what he's looking like now. Bielanov. And here's Bezsonov. Bielanov again. Zavarov, one of 3 to his left. And he slipped Thomas as though he wasn't there. The linesman, in fact, flagging for offside. Luis Aragonés has lighted his cigarette, and he's wondering, I'm sure, whether his team can perhaps find a second wind after this assault, really, from Dynamo Kiev in the opening 20 minutes. But it's only produced one goal. Yakovenko. And Darbaru had to pull out of that one, having been booked. Cabrera ahead of him. And the back pass from Kuznetsov. And the goalkeeper, in keeping with the quick thinking from the Soviet team, finding Yaремчук straight away. Block in. Bалтача. Each team has played 7 matches so far in the new Soviet season, and Dynamo Kiev are joint top with Zenit of Leningrad. One back by De Silva. Rats with the sort of run that he made to set up the goal. And with Dem'yanenko outside him, it really is a formidable left-hand side for Dynamo Kiev. Rats. And here's Zavarov. Generous applause. And Zavarov first for the loose ball again. And this time he couldn't keep his shot down. Well, the neutrals from Lyon, who got tickets for this final, are thoroughly enjoying what they're seeing. Da Silva. Taken from him by Kuznetsov. Block in. A header from Rui. Bezsonov, and back from Bалтача. I was just thinking perhaps the only worry for the Dynamo Kiev players is that they might just lose a little bit of their concentration. So much have they been on top. And here's Bielanov finding a way through the centre again, and blocking. And I wonder whether, as the match wears on, they might rue this succession of missed chances. The game really could have been put out of the reach of Atletico Madrid, who are finding it impossible to live with the interchanging of position and the quick thinking of their Soviet opponents. They're getting overrun in midfield. The back four are not able to cope with 2 lively front players, and it's one-way traffic. Bielanov. But here's Marina. Sandabro for Kike. Marina goes ahead of him. De Silva luring Bezsonov into the challenge. Zavarov. But look how many white shirts around the ball. Rats. Zavarov through the centre this time. Yaремчук was there as well. Dem'yanenko. Block in. Now Yakovenko. And a miscue by Bалтача. But they've quickly got it back again for a weak header from Julio Prieto. Zavarov. It was a beautiful ball from Yaремчук, back for Bielanov. Kike. Although Atletico Madrid, clearly not as famous as Real, their great rivals, it is their 22nd season in European competition. But in their last 4 European campaigns, they went out in the first round. Zavarov coming deep again away from Landaburu and being able to act as the playmaker with the added ability, as we've seen, to get into the striking position to finish off moves that he starts. Da Silva needs some support here. The ball ran for him. Julio Prieto. It's Atletico's throw. Ruiz has stayed back this time, but Arteche has come forward. Thomas again to take it. And the goalkeeper's come a long way and was very positive and made the right decision. Chanoff well off his line to make sure that Arteche couldn't flick the ball on. Bалтача. Space for Kuznetsov. And in turn for Dem'yanenko. And all Atletico Madrid can do is funnel back. Kike. That's a foul by blocking, but you do sense that the game is being played at too fast a pace for Atletico Madrid. They prefer more control in their build-up. But Kike doing well here. Still the final pass inevitably was drawn towards Zavarov. Yakovenko. Dem'yanenko. Pavel Yakovenko, 22, part of a youngish midfield for Dynamo Kiev. Zavarov's only 24. Yaremchuk 24 as well. But V.Lobановський, the coach, really tore the heart out of a side that 2 seasons ago finished only in 10th position in the Soviet Supreme League and rebuilt it to win the championship, as I was saying last year, and they are well on the way here, you would think, to picking up another European trophy. Kike. Here's Landaburu. Maybe a shot from him, but Da Silva in the end couldn't find him with the return pass. Julio Prieto, who scored in both legs of the semi-final against the West German Bayer Uerdingen. Kuznetsov. The way forward through Dem'yanenko again. Bалтача. Landaburu. And Julio Prieto. Marina has Kike outside him. Cabrera joined by Da Silva in the middle. But they are rather giving away what possession they've had, and Bezsonov, who started life as a forward and has rather worked his way back through the team and has had a lot of injury problems in his career. Back in 1977 he was voted the best player in the World Youth Championship, the inaugural World Youth competition, and when you think that in the next competition that honour went to Diego Maradona, that's the sort of company he can be bracketed with. But his progress, it must be said, over the 9 years since then has been hampered by injury. Zavarov overhitting Belyanov this time. Da Silva. One back by Yakovenko. Marina. Chanov played in the quarter-finals and the semi-finals, but didn't start this European run as the first choice. Mikhailov, who's the substitute goalkeeper tonight, was the regular in the championship winning season. Kike. Cabrera was free to the right of Da Silva, but he didn't see him. That was perhaps the first real chance to open up the team from the Soviet Union that have had the chances already as Blokhin shapes the shoot again to open up a substantial lead, but still lead 1-0. Thomas. Cabrera takes over for Marina. Still Marina. The linesman had a flag raised, although the ball went behind for the goal kick. Cabrera was following in, possibly in an offside position, although it didn't look so from our angle, but the flag was up early, and the flags are up now behind the goal. Encouraged by a more meaningful attack pieced together by Atletico Madrid. Dem'yanenko. Yelanov stealing a yard on Ruiz again. Blokhin. And Rats couldn't force it in. And nor could Yakovenko. And that's the problem for Atletico Madrid. Just when they might think they're working their way back into the match, Luis Aragones' defence are so easily split asunder. Da Silva finding Bezsonov so close to him, and then a slip by Bалтача, who stayed down. And a problem for Dynamo Kiev here. Bалтача was one of the injury doubts before the game, and he twisted then, but Yelanov is felled crudely by Arteche. So now they have two injured players, Bалтача at one end of the field, Yelanov at the other, and the free kick in a position which might be to the liking of Oleg Blokhin. But Arteche was palpably late. But it's surely the end of the night for Bалтача. "36 minutes gone." But they do have a vastly experienced covering defender, Andrei Balj, another member of the Soviet World Cup squad in 1982 in Spain. And he's waiting for the referee to allow him to come on. But that will be, it seems, after the free kick. No, now Balj has the signal. And right into the midriff from Rat of Filiol. Blokkin's waiting in the middle, so too was Bielanov. One would think that Atletico Madrid would be quite happy to get through 1-0 down to half-time. Offside, they pushed out in an orderly fashion then. Kike. Clemente. Just over 5 minutes of the first half remaining. And here's Kike. Cabrera miskicked when the goal was beckoning. And Dem'yanenko, you could see, angry with the reorganization of his defence, with Bалтача having gone off the field and Balj really not attuned to the tempo of the match. And clearly a problem around the left ankle. Mandaburu. The foul by Zavarov on Julio Prieto. Well, it would alter the whole complexion if Atletico Madrid could fashion something here. Mandaburu takes it. Arteche is there, and a corner knocked behind by Безсонов. Suitably encouraged, the Spanish contingent in the crowd turn up the volume. Cabrera. Aragonés scored a famous European goal himself in his playing days for Atletico Madrid, the present coach of the club. That was in the 1974 European Cup final against Bayern Munich. It almost won them the Cup too, only for George Schwarzenbeck to equalise almost with the last kick of the 90 minutes, and Bayern won the replay. Here's Bielanov, blocking in the middle, and only blocking. Zavarov. It's Rats on the far side, and that was an interesting ball. Drilled across the face of the goal. Kike. But again, Dynamo Kiev quicker in their movement, quicker in their thinking. Dem'yanenko. And it's another corner. And some pushing right in front of Filiol, who showed a reluctance then to come off his line. Two tall central defenders like Ruiz and Arteche. I suppose the goalkeeper would feel that they should deal with the problem. Da Silva. "37 different clubs from 16 countries have contested the finals in this Cup Winners' Cup. It's the 9th appearance of a Spanish club, which is the best record, equalling that of England. English clubs, of course, banned from European club competition this season. Julio Prieto. Thomas. Landaburu. Now Kike. And Marina. But it really, in the end, was played into a blind alley. And the central route was always likely to find itself cut off. Here goes Dem'yanenko, who's been a prolific scorer from left-back for club and indeed for the Soviet Union. Yelanov came in after Yaремчук had made the run towards the near post. It will surely be a little injury time for the departure of Baltacha. Andre Bau. Yaремчук. And Dabru, who has the passing ability to stretch Dynamo Kiev, looking to hit the front men. But Cabrera hasn't really been in the game. Da Silva has worked hard in the first half, and once or twice Atletico Madrid have been able to build off their Uruguayan central striker. But it has been very much a half that belongs to Dynamo Kiev. And the closer than the first half. Da Silva. Landaburu. Kike. And Marina. Beaten to it by Chanov. Well, that's a more positive aspect from Atletico Madrid. The most difficult save that Chanov's had to make at the feet of Roberto Marina. Ruiz. Clemente. But in the first 45 minutes, the Latin style of play really has come from the normally impassive Soviets. Been freewheeling, a swaggering style really. Da Silva bringing down Balj. One problem that Dynamo Kiev do have, you can see strapping around Bessonov's knee and Blokhin's thigh. They've got one substitute on already. The longer the game goes on, if perhaps Atletico could send it into extra time, that could work to the advantage of the Spaniards. Landaburu. Da Silva. That was cleverly done. Cabrera was in the middle and the pass was cut out, and he was nearly in trying to cut out the back pass. Clemente. Da Silva. That was a fine turn. It took a deflection off Bezsonov. Kike across to take the corner. Ruiz right in on the goal line. Arteche is there as well. And Chanov didn't claim it decisively. And Luis Aragonés on his feet, not happy. A header from Ruiz. Marina. Here's Landaburu. Both teams, I think, in essence, prefer to counter-attack. And as Kike wins the ball back for Atletico, for Cabrera, Julio Prieto, Dem'yanenko, maybe space here for the counter-attack from Dynamo Kiev. And here's Blokhin waved on by the linesman. Yaремчук is in the middle, so too is Bielanov. And good work from Marina. Landaburu trying to find Cabrera, and Chanov showing that he can use the head as well as the hands. And now it's Balj springing from midfield, and Bielanov. Balj. Dem'yanenko is well forward, and Arteche. Here's Yaремчук. Balj, to my mind, straight offside. Zavarov, definitely not a penalty. And Franz Wöhrer, the Austrian referee, ideally placed to make the right decision. Dem'yanenko. But there is a lovely ebb and flow about this match. There's no real note of caution out there. And Cabrera trying to check back inside. Kuznetsov was tripped. Da Silva debating with Landaburu. Will Atletico Madrid go the direct route here? Kike over the ball, Landaburu clips it well. Flipped over the top by Chanov. Landaburu trying to etch his trademark onto this Cup Winners' Cup final. He kept it down too. It needed the save. Some firecrackers set off on the terrace behind the goal to our right, adding to the atmosphere. Balj. Clemente coming in clumsily on Ivan Yaремчук. Chanov. Kuznecov. Offside, but that must have been close. We're not exactly in line here, but it was an imaginative burst from the back by Balj. Zavarov. Nicely played by Yakovenko. Block in. Yakovenko inside him. And he pulled back Marina. And here's Julio Prieto, asking a little too much of Cabrera. Well, Atletico Madrid obviously in need of a goal, and they lost their great goal scorer at the start of this season, Hugo Sanchez, the Mexican, who had really established an international reputation in Spanish football, and of all clubs he chose to go to, it was Real Madrid. And he's had, as I'm sure many of you realise, a marvellous season. On from Julio Prieto. The clearance was from Dem'yanenko. A push, though, by Rat. One number 6 on the other, Julio Prieto. And here's Thomas. Cabrera around the penalty spot, and it almost reached him. Landaburu. Yakovenko again bringing some order to the midfield, but it's not been so easy so far in the second half for Dynamo Kiev. It's been a more promising 10 minutes, and the latest casualty here is Dem'yanenko, wanting to limp towards the touchline, maybe over it to get some treatment while the game goes on. Well, there's been a little shift in the balance of power in the second half, but Dynamo Kiev still lead Atletico Madrid by 1-0. Landaburu. Da Silva, a clever turn. Marina tried to take it early, which he had to do, and Balj was across. Zavarov, running unusually for him into trouble. Arteche, who enjoys linking up from the back. Thomas with the cross, and Chanov, who was making his way out, anticipating it being played towards the far post, had to scurry back to make the catch right on the line. Bielanov making up ground, and Ruiz had to, in the end, at full stretch, turn it behind for the corner. Atletico Madrid clearly lacking pace in the centre of their defence. And it's perhaps going to be another of these teasing corners from Vasily Rat. Chanov keeping his concentration at the other end. Arteche met it. Rats can try again. Thomas. Julio Prieto. Da Silva did very well indeed. Cabrera. And Balj, oh! Cabrera's offside. And that nearly was a chapter of accidents for Andre Balj. His attempted clearance went straight to Kike, but he couldn't do anything but let the ball bounce off his legs and back towards Cabrera, who'd gone offside. But it's certainly not all over yet by any means. Zavarov. Yaremchuk. Bielanov. Beaten to it by Ruiz. Julio Prieto's got more into the game in the second half. He likes to maraud down the right-hand side. Landaburu, 2 to his left. But he gave it away straight to Kuznetsov. And space for Zavarov. And he's going the direct route. And it would have been a masterly goal. The glory would have been his, but certainly some of the credit should go to Bielanov, who made an intelligent run from his right to left to open up the space that Zavarov was able to fill, and the finishing let him down. Block in. The support here from Rats. And too high for the smallest Soviet of them all, Yaremchuk. Thomas, and some weak defending by Clemente allowed Zavarov to go on, and Yaremchuk. Filio helped out his left back then because Clemente was dreaming. And when the other defenders thought there was a certain offside, play went on, rightly so, and Zavarov and Yaremchuk had an opportunity again to stretch the lead. Da Silva. Kike. Here's Rui. Everything really ahead of him. Cabrera. And Julio Prieto firing the shot quickly as he had to take it and couldn't control it. And it is the signal for Setien, who will be in Spain's World Cup 22 in Mexico. And he comes on for Landaburu. Setien, a tall, highly skilled midfield player. If you are a fan of the Tottenham Hotspur star, Glenn Hoddle, he's very much in that mould. And he's got 3 goals in this European run of Atletico Madrid, and they badly need another from him now. It's his first season with the club, signed from Racing Santander. And he's regarded in Spain as something of a late developer, 27 now. And here he is, number 14, for Da Silva. Julio Prieto. Block in, and Zavarov probing away, making sure Atletico stay on their toes. Dem'Yanenko, block in, brilliantly done. Arteche was plugging the gap, but it opened wide with more of this rat-a-tat-tat of passes down the left-hand side that Dynamo Kiev managed to construct so well in the first half. Dem'Yanenko with the corner. Bielanov looking to meet it on the near post, and it'll be another corner. Just over 15 minutes gone in the second half. Away by Arteche. Yaремчук. Well, the ball in the end did run a bit kindly for him, but he tussled away. Da Silva, who looks all arms and legs and awkward at times, but on a high percentage of occasions he's come away with the ball, and this in a team performance where they're on the wrong end of the match. Marina was looking for Setien, but blocking, and now Kuznetsov. Yaремчук had stayed onside. Zavarov coming late, as is his style, and keeping his balance. Blocking. And finally letting go with the left foot. Early in the match he was reluctant to really put the injury to the test. But the angle was always widening for him on that occasion. And in the end, leaning back, he put the shot over. Marina. Setien. And a miscue by Kuznetsov. Recently won a place in the Soviet international team. Tomas again shaping for the long throw, but throwing it straight to Yakovenko. Ruiz. Setien. Cabrera's gone to the far post, and Chanov. Well, he's a goalkeeper who clearly believes in coming off his line. A good 12 yards out to make that catch. That certainly encourages defenders, as long as the goalkeeper makes the catch cleanly. Blocking. Bezsonov. Now Yaремчук. Allowing Clemente to get a foot in. Balь. Well, that looked a dive, but I think it was convincing enough to get the free kick. The substitute seemed to realise that he was not going anywhere to any great purpose and threw himself to the ground. Played short for Yaремчук. Marina. For Kike. Arteche. Setien. Now Julio Prieto. Putting the passes together, and Marina. Kike. And Setien arriving. A missed kick by Julio Prieto, a complete air shot. And it was a marvellous move, really, that has gone from right to left and back again. And Setien got free. The header wasn't easy on the volley for Julio Prieto, but he would have hoped to have done better than that. Blocking. Setien winning it back for Atletico Madrid. Julio Prieto, Cabrera to his right, and Da Silva just trying to flick it on for Kike. Just past the 20-minute mark in the second half. The final of the European Cup Winners' Cup. Dynamo Kiev, whose first half performance was little less than exhilarating, having at times to draw breath here and slow the game down. Still chasing a second goal, which could really make sure of the trophy. Block in with a stray elbow. Cabrera. Yakovenko lengthening the stride away from Marina. Rat had time to set himself, and Dem'Yanenko was annoyed because to the left of Rat, a little pass would have set him in even closer to goal. And you can see Dem'Yanenko there waiting in vain as Rat fired over. Cabrera. Clemente. The cross from Quique da Silva. Setien. It wouldn't drop for either of them. And a second substitution. Yetovchenko, Vadim Yetovchenko. And Zavarov, who is limping, is the player who's replaced. There's another blow for Dynamo Kiev, who've lost two players with injury. And Zavarov, the scorer of the game's only goal, leaves the field with a little over 20 minutes remaining. That's, of course, unless we go to extra time. Marina. Quique. Marina. And Cabrera. As Setien was moving in for the kill, Chanoff off his line, furious with the way the ball was given away, right on the edge of his own penalty area, by defenders who are looking much less secure in the second half. The header from Arteche. Thomas. Cabrera's offside. But realises the urgency of the situation and has retrieved the ball. Atletico Madrid, who came past Celtic, the part-timers from North Wales, Bangor City, the Welsh Cup winners, Red Star Belgrade, and then the West German Cup holders Bayer Uerdingen, to reach this final, while the path for Dynamo Kiev took them past Utrecht, then Craiova, Rapid Vienna and Dukla Prague. Lifted too long by Rat. Julio Prieto. Arteche, they call him Artechenbauer when he comes forward, a reference to Franz Beckenbauer's style, of course. Mistake by Quique, and it could be a costly one, but Belyanov is offside. But only just. Bezsonov, who switched to a more central defensive role after the departure of Baltacha. Yaремчук. Yevtuchenko. Now Blokhin. Rats away on this near side to Blokhin's left. Blokhin had eyes only for the goal. Arteche finding Thomas. And Arteche staying forward. Setien, Cabrera and De Silva joined in the middle by Arteche, but Chanoff has been a dominating goalkeeper when the crosses have come in, and he used the ball well there to find Bielanov. Yevtuchenko blocking to his right, Belanov to his left. And they again show an inability to finish. It was really a case of 3 against 2 on the break. And the longer it goes on, the more Atletico Madrid will begin to believe that maybe they can get the 1 goal which would turn this around. Kike. Oh, it was only a yard away from Setien. It needed just a little bit more deliberation in the pass. And of course, having given the ball away with so many players forward, there's always the risk of being outnumbered on the counter-attack. Setien. Clemente is down hurt just outside the Atletico penalty area, playing everybody onside. Bielanov. Yevtuchenko. Ball blocking, and it went the wrong way because outside him was Yaремчук. Hit well wide by Yakovenko. Rui. Atletico Madrid really with nothing left to do here but gamble. They've shown plenty of courage in the second half. And it wouldn't altogether be a surprise if they did get back on level terms. They'll need a second bite at this free kick. The Rats had not gone back the full distance. Luis Aragonés leaning forward intently as Marina curls it in, and Chanoff stayed back and was right to do so. "15 minutes left. And Villiol there before blocking. Thomas. Marina, who's beavered away in midfield to try and unlock the door. And yet they haven't quite given him the right key. Clemente. And Chanoff impulsively out, and he got away with it. He didn't really have to come. Da Silva. All really emanating from the goalkeeper's mistake, and it's led to a corner. Back in the middle, there was just a little encouraging pat from Bezsonov to Chanoff to tell him not to worry about it. And Chanoff with the fifth. Marina, but it was a foul on the goalkeeper. Viktor Chanoff, whose older brother is also a first division goalkeeper in the Soviet Union. Well, the referee was making sure that a free kick had been awarded for a clumsy piece of work by Julio Prieto, and when it was taken, the linesman had his flag up again a little late. Dynamo Kiev have certainly been wasteful in their finishing, but they have, to my mind, been slightly unfortunate on a couple of occasions with the offside decisions. The linesman's flagging again, but the referee didn't see it. That was for presumably a push inside that Dynamo Kiev penalty area. Clemente. Julio Prieto. Good defending there by Kuznetsov. Here's Yaremchuk. Yakovchenko through the middle, where Belanov made a decoy run, allowing space for Balj to play in the cross. Here's Ratz. Yakovchenko. Tomas trying to prevent him getting in the cross, which he did. Yakovchenko. Yaremchuk. Yakovchenko's offside. And it was neat and perhaps a little over-embroidered on the edge of the area. Sometimes their love of playing little 1-2s is spoiling the purpose of the exercise. And they're still not sure of winning the Cup Winners' Cup, Dynamo Kiev. 1 goal to the good. Here's Dem'yanenko, and that was a marvellous effort. He knew exactly what he was trying to do. He saw the goalkeeper coming off the line. And Filiol scampering back. Just managed to get it over the top. A looping header. And it would have dropped in. Dem'yanenko in the wars. Clearly a clash of heads after he's made contact with the ball. One always thinks of double vision or delayed concussion when that type of episode occurs. Both substitutes used, remember. For the moment, Dynamo Kiev down to 10 men and their captain off the field. Dem'yanenko being waved back on again. Arteche. Yaremchuk. Yakovchenko onside. And that was nearly an own goal by Clemente. The referee urging the taker of the corner, Ratz, to not dally as he was trying to do. It was a poor corner when it came. Cabrera. Da Silva beaten to it by Kuznetsov. Block in. Arteche, but he had to stretch to reach it and could fashion no sort of pass from it. But overall, it's been a match in which the ball has been passed pleasingly. And only wildness in front of goal, really, has prevented more scores. Just a solitary goal 5 minutes into the first half from Alexander Zavarov. Is that going to be enough to win the Cup Winners' Cup for Dynamo Kiev? Cabrera. Took too long. Robbed by Belanov. Well, 1 or 2 players looking weary now. That was Vasily Ratz slowly picking himself up. But Atletico Madrid have got to find a moment of inspiration here, or a moment of good fortune. Arteche's header. Nicely played, Julio Prieto. Setien. Kike. But when they needed a good cross, it wasn't forthcoming. Well, the 16,000 or so Spaniards seem to have lost their voices, as though perhaps they're accepting defeat. They come by plane, of course, by car. I heard of a train that came all through the night and is going back all through tonight. But it'll be a quiet mood unless something happens in the 6 or 7 minutes that remain. Block in. It may happen at the wrong end for the Spaniards, of course. Blocking is trying to ensure that. Jelonov, the offside flag again. There's been no sympathy really from the linesman on the far side. There've been one or two marginal decisions, to say the least. Kike. And Setien, in his anxiety to keep things going, found the ball caught up under his feet. Block in. Yaремчук in space. Four waiting for the cross. Foul by Yakovenko. You just wish you could inject a little bit more self-belief into Atletico Madrid here. Arteche's got it, but there are one or two standing rather flat-footed around him. Setien. And it's out of play. Thomas trying to make progress on the very line itself. Rats. Jelonov. Yevtuchenko, and blocking is the player arriving ahead of Filiol. That surely is it. And how appropriate that the scorer of a goal the last time that Dynamo Kiev won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1975 has scored again here. It was a move in keeping with the flow of their play throughout the match, really. And the man spare found by Yevtuchenko was blocking. Filiol left in no man's land. 2-0. Good vision, really, all the way across the pitch. Jelonov, Yevtuchenko, and with his so-called weaker foot, that finish was exemplary. And blocking is signalling to the bench that maybe now, with the cushion of the 2-goal lead, he might want to come off and let the 10 men fight it out to the last, although there may not be much of a battle ahead for them. It's 11 years since Blockin was European Footballer of the Year, but he's shown, even though not fully fit, that his impact is still there at the highest level of European club football. Thomas. Kike. Certainly an improvement in Atletico Madrid in the second half, but they couldn't do enough when they were slightly on top. And Blockin finishing the match in a mixture of pain and joy. Jelonov. Setien. The referee looks at the watch. And Atletico Madrid are clearly a beaten side, but it's a question of beaten by how many? It could be by 3. Yevtuchenko has made it 3. It's a realistic scoreline. I don't think even the most ardent Atletico Madrid fan would argue that they've been beaten by a vastly superior side, and they sprang the offside trap this time. And Yevtuchenko just had a look round to be sure, and then accepted the formality. He lost his place to Zielinov, but he's come from the bench here to make his mark on a European final. It was 3-0 11 years ago when they beat Ferencváros. It's 3-0 now. Setien looking for a little gap inside that near post in case Chanov was caught up in the celebration. And Rats in pain. Blokhin is hardly able to stand. He's staying on the pitch. Bezsonov has a bandaged knee. If they were all fully fit, I wonder what the scoreline would be then. Julio Prieto. Setien and Yakovenko, who's had a very effective and efficient night in midfield. Not the most spectacular of the midfield players, but perhaps the most unselfish. It was his back pass that took the steam out of that last Atletico Madrid attack. Kike. Setien might strike one here, or perhaps Julio Prieto will. They're inviting him to do that. And Cabrera reacted off the goalkeeper, who made another fine save. And Chanov using every goalkeeping technique to keep his clean sheet. He beat away the effort from Julio Prieto, and he now takes his share of the bows and the hugs of triumph. The winners of the 1986 European Cup Winners' Cup are Dynamo Kiev, and proud winners too. In all honesty, they've made Atletico Madrid look second best and a little second rate at times. The early goal from Zabarov, the goal from Blokhin that made sure of the victory, and then Yetovchenko, the substitute, getting clear to make it 3-0 a couple of minutes from time. In many ways, it's not been a happy week in the Soviet Union, and that problem is still clearly to continue at Chernobyl, but there'll be special delight in Kiev, not just from the victory. They were favourites to win here, that's for sure, but the style that they put on, particularly in the first half when they didn't adorn their splendid creativity with goals. They do say, those who know the two sides too well, that the Dynamo Kiev of 1986 aren't quite as flowing and as stylish as the team that won this competition 11 years earlier. All I can say is the 1975 team must have been very, very good. obviously they haven't brought a great deal of support with them, but all the neutrals and even the Spaniards are joining in the applause. They await now the presentation. A few Soviet followers are on the pitch and wanting to cheer block-in, but it's Anatoly Dem'yanenko who accepts the Cup Winners' Cup from the President of UEFA, Jacques Georges. The toast here in Lyon is Dynamo Kiev. And one wonders, a number of these players will be going to Mexico with the Soviet Union. Traditionally, the Soviets are poor travellers, and you tend to forget them as realistic contenders for World Cups for that reason. But they have players of marvellous skill, of true international class. It won't be quite the case of 1975 when the entire Dynamo Kiev team represented the Soviet Union and in fact wore out a lot of the star names there, not blocking, but certainly the core of the side going to Mexico will come from these players who now go forward to accept their own mementos. A limping Oleg block-in, a second Cup Winners' Cup winners' medal to add to his collection. Rats, who showed so much pace down the left-hand side. Bалтача, injured in the first half. Balь, who substituted well for him. Zavarov, who set the tone with an impish display in the opening half hour. And the substitutes getting their souvenirs as well. And a sympathetic round of applause for Atletico Madrid, who I think accepted that they were well beaten on the night. Ubaldo Filiol has a World Cup winner's medal, but it's a loser's medal for him tonight. Setien, who has Mexico to look forward to. Arteche, who tried to inspire a revival. Kike, Clemente. Cabrera, who really couldn't get into the game as the partner of De Silva up front.
De l'Atlético Madrid. Voilà, ça c'est pour tout le monde.
Les joueurs de l'Atlético